right, just a quick introduction again about you. You are the professor at the Department of Islamic History and Civilization, Academy of Islamic Studies in Malaya, and currently the head of department for the second time from April 2020. With that, I would like to ask you to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato' Farouk, for the chance given to me this afternoon. My fellow speakers, I think my talk will be in line with what Dr. Peter has mentioned. So probably some of the points that I will mention probably repeating of what Dr. Peter, but I don't want to be too long in this session. I will probably just summarize of what I'm going to say this afternoon. I think everyone aware that the establishment of the State of Israel was pronounced on 14th of May 1948. For me, from this point of time, from that point of time, the existence of the State of Israel has caused unrest in the Middle East until today. And then the establishment of the State of Israel, this one, has actually received a tremendous support even before its creation, which I think most probably since 1917, as Dr. Peter also mentioned, that according to the Balfour Declaration, which was dated on 2nd November 1917, in that declaration for us, some of us already know about this, but for those who didn't know about this, I probably just would like to read some part of it. It is clearly mentioned that His Majesty government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this project. For me, this can be regarded as the biggest support, biggest boost for the Jewish people in the history, and then specifically for the Zionist movement organization. They received a huge support from the world superpower during that time. Why there is no mention of creating a Palestine state in Palestine? Rather, it focused on creating a national home for the Jewish people. Why there was no recognition, for instance, to Palestinians during that time? And why it is purposely mentioned that Palestine as the place to establish a national home for the Jewish people? So since that declaration, the Jewish community, I mean the World Zionist Organization, has not stopped working towards achieving its goal, which is to establish the state for Israel. To establish the state of Israel, who many of them, I mean for the Jewish people, who many of them were in diaspora in Eastern and Western Europe. The first leader of World Zionist Organization, Theodor Herzl, we know that he worked tirelessly to lobby many strategic organizations to support their main objective. And to make it short, once the establishment of the state of Israel was made public, the Arab community, especially the Palestinians, have no choice but to resist. The Arab countries, including Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, as well as Saudi Arabia, who nowadays going to do some sort of normalization with Israel, during this time, was involved to defend Palestine territory from being taken and occupied by the regime. The effort did not succeed in many occasions, such as the one that we know already, as mentioned, which is the Six-Day War in 1967. Since that time, the world leader has entered into discussion on the peace plan. There are many roadmaps has been introduced, as also been mentioned by Dr. Peter. And most recently, we know that the Trump peace plan, which is dubbed as the deal of the century by some people, they regard it, it's not the deal of the century, but this is the worst deal of the century. Is it going to work? Many has doubt on it, and Palestinians call on rejecting the plan. And many organizations also in the world, nowadays, they are trying to lobby to reject the plan, which was introduced by Trump, this one. For me, as long as the status of Jerusalem and Baitul Maqdis has not been resolved, there will be a problem. Since 2 years ago, we know that the world superpower, has recognized Jerusalem to be the eternal capital city of Israel. Since the move of US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in May 2018, 2 years ago. This has further caused continuous conflict in the region, which has started, as Obama once mentioned, this conflict has already there for more than a century ago. I still remember his speech when he gave, when he addressed to the congregation in Cairo, in Egypt, that he mentioned this. For Palestinians, I believe this is another Nakba, a tragedy for those who own the land and suddenly saw their land was confiscated and occupied. So creating an ideal state in the Middle East is not that easy without recognizing this issue and without resolving it. The Palestinians will keep struggle to reclaim their land, while the Israel will keep saying that their existence is legitimate. With strong support of US, we do not know how much more land that they want to annex. So tackling this issue is very crucial in order to have an ideal state in the Middle East region. Taking into consideration of an ideal state, the stability of the region must be at the top priority of the world. I read there was a report by the Washington Institute on 25th of May, 25th of February, 25th of May is 3 days later. 25th of February 2020, that Palestinian majority rejects two-state solution. This is in line what Dr. Peter has mentioned. It says that in between the Trump peace plans released on January 28 and Israel March 2nd election, new survey data shows that most Palestinian respondents now say they prefer regaining all of historic Palestine over permanent peace with Israel. If this the reality or the popular view among Palestinians now, so the solution of two states will not be materialized. Yeah? Things quite complicated actually. In 2017, for instance, Al Jazeera reported that Hamas accept Palestinian state within 1967 border without recognizing Israel. So this is the Hamas stand on the issue of the states. Hamas actually used to support two-state solution, whereby it is reported by Uri Friedman in the Atlantic that Hamas accept the state within the 1967 borders, which occupied by the Israel in the 1967 war. So the demand from Hamas has to be considered as well. While Hamas in 1988 founding charter called for the takeover of all the mandate Palestine. This we know that the establishment of Hamas, they go against Israeli resistance. The new document says it will accept the 1967 borders as the basis of the Palestinian state, with Jerusalem as its capital and the return of refugees to their homes. That's why I come to the issue of Jerusalem. If the issue of Jerusalem is not settled, so the problem will keep exist and will continue. This has been further reiterated by Mahmoud Abbas, who last Tuesday actually announced that the PLO and the State of Palestine absolved all the agreements and understandings with the American and Israeli government, and all of the obligation from these agreements, including the security ones. They don't want to involve anymore in this kind of agreements. Yeah. So this is very alarming at the moment. So I think we will go back to the discussion on to settle the issues of recognizing Palestine as well. My last point probably I would like to share this afternoon is that the ideal state must have a good relations between leaders and people. We have the concept of ideal states in Islam, which introduced by Al-Farabi, for instance, in Al-Madinah Al-Fadila, Al-Mawardi in his Ahkam Al-Sultaniyah. This is a kind of the reference of good governance in Islam. In this regard, we could understand that governance is centered on the relation between man and God, and also man and man, or human and human. Without the stability of the region, in specific of the issue of Arab and Israel, the ideal state could not be achieved. So it will remain nice on theory and on paper. However, for the implementation, it could be reached to nowhere. So another keyword is justice. It should be taken seriously, especially for those who are in power. In Islam, justice or adalah is the key concept and attribute which all leaders should hold into it and implement in their policy. That's why the justice leader has been mentioned several times by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They will be given, or they will be rewarded with Jannah if they implement justice. So by taking justice value seriously, I believe that the problem in the Middle East can be resolved by recognizing as well the right of the Palestinians. Hence, I would like to conclude for this afternoon by quoting Karen Armstrong, who says that there will be no peace and stability without justice. So thank you very much, Dr. Farouk. I hand it to you again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hussain. Thank you very much. Very interesting. But in my opinion, this idea of moving the capital to Jerusalem by the states, I think it would not have materialized without the support, tacit support of Saudi Arabia itself. And I think that support has encouraged the United States to make that move. And I think that this is a very important issue to be discussed, and I think there must be an international pressure on it. And I believe, as you had mentioned, that of course the issue of Jerusalem is an ongoing issue and an eternal issue. I mean, if you watch that movie by Ridley Scott as well, when at the end of the movie, when Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi was asked, why are you so concerned about Jerusalem? So the idea is because it has been the issue ever since, and it is going to go beyond the 21st century even. And I think that to me, my personal opinion on this, I don't know whether it's Prof. Chandra will share with my idea or Prof. Cesar will share, but I believe in Edo Science approach that it must be a binational state which is governed by a secular law, and that would encompass all the citizens, whether they're Israelis, whether they're Christians, whether they're Muslims, to live together. And it should be an international city. And that's my idea about Jerusalem.